He picked the wrong man to embarrass. The dojo smelled like rubber mats and old sweat. 40 people watching. Marcus Teller stepped onto the floor like he owned the building, because, technically, he did. Third-generation karate school. Regional tournament champion 3 years running. A man who had spent 20 years curating an image of dominance, and another 5 protecting it with the kind of low-grade cruelty that passes for leadership when no one has ever pushed back. The man he was pointing at didn't look like a threat. He was leaning against the back wall with a paper cup of water, watching a sparring session with the calm expression of someone waiting for a bus. Mid-40s. Work boots. A faded gray Henley that had been washed too many times. He had driven his nephew there for a class evaluation and had no particular interest in the spectacle unfolding around him. His name was Daniel Holt. And Marcus Teller had no idea. It started small. That's how it always starts. Marcus had spotted Daniel during the teen sparring rotation and decided, for reasons that said more about Marcus than anyone else, that the man's stillness bothered him. He didn't like people who watched without applauding. He didn't like the way Daniel stood, not tense, not impressed, just present. Like someone who had seen real things and found karate tournaments mildly interesting at best. "You got a problem with the instruction?" Marcus called across the floor. Loud enough for the room. Daniel looked up from his cup. "No. Because you've been standing there looking like you'd rather be somewhere else." "I'm fine." That was Daniel's first mistake, Marcus decided. Not deferring fast enough. Not performing the right amount of reverence. It was a small window of disrespect, imagined, mostly, but Marcus had built his entire social architecture on closing those windows violently. He walked over. Up close, Marcus was physically impressive. 6'2". Thick through the shoulders. He wore his black belt like a title, which it was, technically. He had the practiced posture of a man who expected rooms to shift when he entered them. Students nearby stopped their drills and watched with the particular stillness of people who had seen this before and knew better than to intervene. "You train?" Marcus asked. "Not anymore," Daniel said. "Not anymore." Marcus smiled at the room. Performed amusement. "What does that mean? You did a few months of Taekwondo in 1998. A few people laughed. Nervous laughter. The kind that buys safety. Daniel looked at him steadily. "Something like that. Because I'm seeing a guy who walked into a serious training facility looking like he wandered in off a construction site, and I'm trying to figure out if you know where you are." What Marcus Teller didn't understand, what he couldn't have known, because he'd never bothered to look, was that the man in front of him had spent 11 years moving through places that made a regional karate tournament look like a birthday party. Daniel Holt had enlisted at 19. Infantry first. Then, after a deployment to Afghanistan that his psych eval described only as operationally intensive, he was approached about a different kind of work. He spent the next 8 years attached to a unit whose name he still didn't say out loud in casual conversation. He had operated in 6 countries. He had trained with British SAS, Israeli Krav Maga instructors, a retired UFC champion who consulted for the government, and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master in Sao Paulo who had once choked out 3 men in a single evening without raising his heart rate above 60. Daniel had been in real fights. Not tournaments. Not sparring matches with rules and referees and concerned parents on the bleachers. Real situations, with real stakes, where losing meant something permanent. He had the kind of body awareness that doesn't come from a dojo, it comes from needing it to stay alive, repeatedly, over a decade, until it stops being a skill and becomes a reflex. He had left the service 4 years ago. He ran a home inspection business now. He coached his nephew's Little League team on Saturdays. He drove a 2019 Ford F-150 with 87,000 miles on it and a cracked passenger mirror he kept forgetting to fix. He was, by every outward measure, a quiet man living a quiet life. Marcus took one more step forward. Close enough that it was no longer conversation. I'm asking you directly, Marcus said. You want to step on the floor? Daniel set down his paper cup on the folding table beside him. Slowly. No drama in it. No, he said. I'm here for my nephew. Smart, Marcus said. Loud. Smart choice. He turned back toward the floor, playing to the room, milking it. That was his second mistake. Because he turned his back. He didn't see Daniel's expression change, or rather, not change. That was the tell, for anyone who knew what to look for. Not anger. Not wounded pride. Just a very slight settling, like a piece of machinery shifting into a lower, more stable gear. The kind of calm that isn't relaxation. The kind that comes from the other side of a lot of training. One of the adult students near the back, a man named Ray Castillo, who had trained under Marcus for 3 years and quietly hated him for most of them, noticed. He took a small step back. Later, he would tell his wife he didn't know why he did it. Instinct, maybe. Marcus turned back around. You know what, I changed my mind. I think you should step on the floor. I think it'd be educational. He gestured to the mat. Protective gear's optional. Your call. The room had gone completely quiet. Daniel looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at his nephew, a 13-year-old named Caleb who was watching from across the room with wide eyes and a complicated expression, embarrassment and something else, something that might have been hope. Daniel looked back at Marcus. You sure, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. Marcus spread his hands. Guest of honor. What happened next lasted approximately 40 seconds. Later, in separate conversations, the 41 people present would describe it differently. Some said it looked choreographed, like something from a film, too clean to be real. Others said it was the least dramatic fight they'd ever seen, which was somehow more unsettling than if there had been noise. Ray Castillo, who had a background in wrestling before he found karate, said it was the most efficient thing he had witnessed in 20 years of training. He wasn't trying to hurt him, Ray would say later. That was the thing. He was trying not to. Marcus came in the way he always came in, fast, confident, with a combination that had ended 3 tournament fights in his career. It didn't land. Daniel wasn't where Marcus expected him to be. The movement was small, a shift, almost polite in its economy, and then Marcus was off balance, still moving forward with committed momentum and nowhere to put it. There was a grip. There was a rotation. There was the specific, pneumatic sound of a large man hitting a rubber mat in a way that is less about the fall and more about the sudden absence of any ability to stop it. Marcus was face down. His arm was extended behind him in a direction arms don't naturally go. There was pressure on the joint, precise, calibrated, the exact amount required to communicate the situation without doing anything permanent. Daniel held it for 2 seconds. Then he stood up, stepped back, and retrieved his paper cup. The room was silent. Marcus got up slowly. His face was red. His breathing was controlled in the way that has nothing to do with composure and everything to do with pain management. He looked at Daniel with an expression that passed through several phases in rapid succession: fury, recalibration, something approaching fear, before landing, finally, on a blank professional mask that fit him poorly. "Where'd you train?" he said. Daniel drained the rest of his water. "Here and there." He called Caleb over. Caleb walked across the mat with the careful dignity of a 13-year-old trying very hard not to smile. They left. The real fallout happened Thursday. It started on a Wednesday evening when Ray Castillo, who had filmed roughly 40 seconds of footage on his phone without fully deciding to, posted a clip to a private martial arts forum he'd belonged to for years. He didn't name the dojo. He didn't name Marcus. He just wrote, "saw something today. Interested in opinions, *." Within 6 hours, 3 people with professional backgrounds in military combatives had responded. One of them, a former Marine raider who went by the handle Phantom_Blue, had looked at the footage for approximately 30 seconds before writing, *, that's a CAG guy or I'll eat my hat. Look at the grip. Look at the exit. That's not sport. That's work, *. By Thursday morning, the clip had migrated to a larger forum. Then to Reddit. Then to a private Facebook group for veteran martial artists with about 12,000 members, where it ignited a thread that ran to 460 comments before the moderators closed it. Marcus Teller's name appeared in the thread by Thursday afternoon. Someone in the region recognized the dojo's distinctive logo on a banner in the background of the video. This is where it compounded. Because Marcus, in the weeks prior, had been engaged in a dispute with a former student, a 23-year-old named Tyler who had trained at the dojo for 4 years, earned his brown belt, and then made the mistake of opening a competing school 2 miles away. Marcus had responded by leaving a cascade of false 1-star reviews across every platform Tyler's new school appeared on. He had contacted 2 of Tyler's corporate clients and told them, falsely, that Tyler had been dismissed from the dojo for stealing. He had sent a cease and desist letter drafted by a local attorney that Tyler's lawyer described, in a response letter, as creatively constructed but legally unserious. Tyler had documentation of all of it. He had been waiting for the right moment. The moment was Thursday. By the following Monday, Marcus was fielding a defamation suit, a report filed with the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division regarding the fraudulent reviews, and a formal complaint from one of the corporate clients, who was, as it turned out, not pleased to learn they'd been fed false information about a vendor. The client had contracts Marcus's dojo was also party to. Past tense, as of Monday. 3 of Marcus's senior students, adults who had trained with him for years and whose monthly fees constituted a significant portion of the dojo's operating revenue, quietly submitted cancellation notices over the following 2 weeks. Ray Castillo was the first. He sent a polite, brief email. He didn't explain. The Regional Tournament Association, where Marcus sat on a disciplinary committee with some authority over eligibility decisions, received a formal request from 2 member schools to review his conduct. The request included the video. The review process was described as ongoing, which, in these contexts, means what it means. Marcus posted a statement on the dojo's Instagram. He described the incident as a training demonstration conducted with a visiting practitioner. The post received 11 comments before he turned comments off. The ratio of eye-roll emojis to supportive remarks was, by anyone's honest accounting, unkind. His attorney called it a rough patch. His wife, who had watched him operate for 17 years and had her own unspoken ledger of accumulated grievances, said very little. This was noted. Daniel heard about most of it secondhand. Caleb showed him the Reddit thread about a week after the fact, on a Saturday afternoon after Little League practice, in the cab of Daniel's truck with the windows down and the smell of cut grass coming in from the park. Daniel read it for about 30 seconds. Then he handed the phone back. "Huh," he said. "You knew who he was?" Caleb asked. "I knew the type." They drove home. Daniel made grilled cheese. He watched the last 3 innings of a game he didn't particularly care about. He went to bed at 10:15. He had a home inspection in the morning, a 1970s split level out toward the edge of town that the buyers had concerns about. Roof, mainly. He'd seen it before. He knew what to look for. He slept fine. There's a particular kind of man who mistakes the absence of performance for the absence of capability. Who reads stillness as weakness. Who interprets patience as submission and confuses noise with power. He gravitates toward spaces where credentials are displayed and hierarchies are legible and the rules are written in his favor, and he mistakes those conditions for proof of something real about himself. Marcus Teller was that kind of man. He had been that kind of man for a long time, in a world that mostly let him be. He encountered a different kind of man. The kind whose credentials aren't displayed because they were earned in contexts where displaying them would have been beside the point. The kind whose confidence doesn't need an audience because it was forged somewhere an audience couldn't go. The kind who has seen what actual danger looks like and has therefore developed a very accurate sense of what is and isn't worth his energy. The confrontation itself lasted 40 seconds. The consequences will last considerably longer. Caleb enrolled in a different martial arts school the following month, a jiu-jitsu gym run by a retired cop named Frank who charged reasonable rates, didn't tolerate cruelty from instructors, and had a wall covered in the competition photos of students who had gone on to regional and national titles. Frank shook Daniel's hand when they met. Firm, brief, the kind of handshake that skips the performance and goes straight to the information. "He yours?" Frank asked, nodding at Caleb. "Nephew," Daniel said. Frank looked at Daniel for a moment with the expression of someone running a quiet calculation. Then he nodded. "He'll do fine here." Daniel believed him. He filled out the enrollment form, wrote the check, and drove home in the truck with the cracked mirror. He still hasn't fixed it. He keeps forgetting. Asterisk if this story hit the way it was supposed to, drop a comment with the one word that describes how it landed. And if you know someone who'd appreciate it, send it to them. They'll know why, asterisk.